What's going on, everybody? What's going on? What's going on? So tonight we're going to be sitting down with Dave Keene, the owner of Mighty Plant. Mighty Plant is an organic nutrients company, um, microbial products. Just complete biologically driven. A philosophy that seems to bridge hardcore cultivation with everyday gardening. We're going to talk some roots, microbes, compost teas, flowers, tomatoes, the home growing, a few things in between. Let me welcome Dave to the show. Dave Keene, thank you, man, for hanging out tonight and talking about your products, brother.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I'm very happy and privileged to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, man. Me and Tom, I actually met you at Canicon this year at the booth when we were there. We stopped by and I've abused the products in the past. If I was at a store and I'd see the compost tea and whatnot, I'd always grab it, throw it in the toolbox as something to have on hand. It's quick, simple, no brew. So I've always been since I've seen them. I've been a huge fan of what you guys have been doing. So I'm flattered that you guys were willing to come on and hang out tonight. It definitely is. The products are outstanding. There's just nothing you can say bad about them. Um, so I'd like to get in a little bit, of like the birth of Mighty Plant, and stuff like that, if that's cool. So um, before Mighty Plant existed, where you were a gardener, a businessman, a tinkerer. Like, what was the origin story? Like, how did you get into this organic, company?
Well, I'll first start going way back to when I was a high school student, and I just want to establish a common ground here that I know uh, that some of your listeners will appreciate that. I was a very poor student in high school. I was an underachiever. I had no motivation, no direction. I didn't know what I wanted to do when I got out of high school, and I got a job as a plumber's apprentice when I graduated. And let me tell you, digging ditches is not fun. And that was before the ditch digging machines had been invented. I
Yeah.
was the machine. So I then said there's got to be something better than this. So I joined the army and then found
Awesome.
myself in Vietnam. And this was a time when most people had never heard of Vietnam. There were no combat troops in Vietnam at that time.
What year
Uh,
did you wind up going in?
that was 1962.
Oh wow, yeah. So real early.
There were only, I'll tell you how many were in Vietnam at that time. I worked with a group of about 40, and that 40 was all CIA and State Department.
Hmm.
And because of my job occupation, I had a top secret clearance and a diplomatic passport. And I was responsible for sending and receiving classified information in a field called cryptography. That's
Okay.
encoding, decoding classified messages, and I would send it to President Kennedy and the Pentagon and chiefs of staffs. So I was privy to everything that was going on in Vietnam at that time, and I can tell you right now that the CIA orchestrated that war to what we know of it as of today. So it was all done by the CIA.
And to what end? To what end was it? I mean, what was was it
They wanted
drugs?
to.
Was
That
it
was
that?
during the
I
Cold
mean,
War, and the mindset of everyone at that time was stop the spread of communism.
so they
We just
wanted it as like a place on the checkerboard, basically.
exactly. We just had a
Okay.
failure in Cuba being taken over by Castro. Kennedy tried to change that around, and we know what happened there. It was a disaster. So they had to make a stand somewhere, and they chose Vietnam to do it.
Yeah. What a
And
quagmire, to say
I,
the least. A quagmire.
yes, yes. I'll give you for an example if you want to hear one.
Yeah, of
Uh,
course.
I'll get a report, say from the field, that there's some Vietnamese farmers protesting some government agricultural policy, and they'd be marching, carrying signs and pitchforks. And I would send that information to the That's what we called the CIA at that time. They were the spooks. And they would take that information and rewrite it, send it back to me, and then I had to put it in code and send it to all these addresses that I just mentioned. But instead of peaceful farmers protesting, carrying signs and pitchforks, they became communist insurgents carrying AK-47s and Chinese munitions. So that was an escalation. And they did this time and time and time again to draw the United States into a combat with the communist fraction of that country. The last thing that happened was in 1964 was the Gulf of Tonkin crisis. Supposedly, North Vietnamese gunboats fired on U.S. destroyers. Well, that never happened. That was a CIA concoction. But that's what caused us to get into the war. Johnson then declared war in Vietnam.
Yeah, that entire thing. My father went to Nam in '68, and my father-in-law was in Nam, and they were just miserable. Like anytime they've ever, the small amount of times I've ever heard either of them speak about it, it's just the same thing. It's like it was just straight bullshit. We were there, watching our friends die for absolutely. And I'm like, it's literally the same thing. Since World War II, World War II is really the only last war that mattered globally, like in a way where it was compassion versus, geopolitics. You know what I mean? Like, over anything else. We were there to save the, legit cause. All these other wars, it's bullshit. Oil or, getting a position over between China and Russia. It's disgraceful, man. And the CIA is always behind it, which is the worst part of it.
Thing is, there's rogue CIA cells. It's not CIA. I learned is not a homogeneous organization. There are rogue cells all over the world, and even in this country. And I can tell you some things that are semi-confidential now. They were top secret for a while, but a lot of those people are dead and gone. And I can probably talk freely, but
I wouldn't wait to say. If anything you're going to say, is classified, please, don't feel like you have to say it.
I don't even think I want to go there because I've been very careful about what I say according to my top secret clearance. I've still got to abide by a lot of things that.
Can I ask one question maybe that you might be able to answer? I mean, in all the time you were in, with all this classified stuff, you ever see anything come across about, UAPs or any of that stuff, in the airspace or anything in Vietnam at that time?
The MIAs.
Like UFOs or anything like that, like all this stuff's coming out now. If you had a clearance, I'm wondering if you ever saw any of that kind of stuff. As you were, they're so good at covering that. I don't even believe it's real anymore. I really don't.
Just not going to let them speak on that.
Yeah.
We were really too busy looking over our shoulders to see what's behind us.
Well, I mean, you never know with the CIA buzzing around. It might have been on some of the paperwork. You know what I mean? Who knows at this point? That would.
But that's the hot issue now. I understand.
Oh man, it's and it's just I don't know, man. It's the whole thing just seems so well timed. It's just insanity to me. Like. They ran out of shit to keep people distracted. It seems, like there's a weakening effect towards, where people are really buying into the whole, Democrat, liberal versus MAGA thing. It's really fading. So I think it's more or less just another thing to throw out there to keep people, chasing the ball like a kitten. You know what I mean?
Well, I don't know. Even. In the Bible, there are scriptures in the New Testament where keep your eyes toward the heavens. There are spiritual beings. We're not fighting flesh and blood here on earth. The real powers are in the heavens.
You'd have to think that it's something.
They know like that.
Yeah. Like that's exactly like at that point the heavens weren't. You know what I mean? Like they would. Just kind of, there was a few different people over centuries that really focused on it, and it wasn't, and a lot of it was the church didn't want it to come out about, celestial this, celestial that. So it was so pushed down that people speaking like that at that time, it makes you wonder, like, because it wasn't part of, society. It was, stars and all that stuff. There was very specific things, but for them to keep it away is makes you wonder, and then they talk about it in in the Bible, but again, then you can always say it's man's interpretation of what was said, because the Bible has different authors, or however I guess this is what the way they put it. So who knows? But I always say, every time they find a civilization, they find some kind of tomb or or a pyramid, there's always some kind of a sketching, or whatever you want to call them, a glyph with something that looks like a spaceship, or something, a Martian-looking person, or there's no way that you could even cut that stone like that. So there's too many things that point to there being something at some point, maybe, or it is true. But when you see all the, the preponderance of evidence, you're just like, man, like, there's no way that somebody with a copper tool did this, 5,000 years ago. So it makes you wonder, what they talk about when they say, it's going to, look to the heavens above and whatnot. It's interesting, because is that what they did? And those monuments and whatnot were, the acknowledgement of it. It brings you down such a rabbit hole. It's pretty cool though, So.
Yeah. Well, I've traveled a lot in the world, and I was in Bogota one time in the Gold Museum, and I was shown a gold artifact that was done by the Incas many thousands of years ago, and it was an exact replica of what we would call a spaceship today, or it would be like a jet plane today. It had the wings.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. It was like a little gold thing or something, right? Yeah.
One, and then there's a lot of same type of cut pyramids in Central America as there are in Egypt. So,
yep.
Connect the dots.
They all line up with each other too. If they say like latitudinally, longitudinally, and whatnot, there's a sequence to them also. Like they all have an alignment, cosmic alignment or whatever, however the terminology was, but they all match, at like a specific, whatever you want to call it. But it's, I mean, I don't know. It's too unreal to me, because they're talking about like all that new stuff, especially down in Central America, and what the LiDAR scanning and whatnot. And they're showing now that the entire Amazon jungle was a civilization. And what we're seeing now is the overgrowth of their crops and trees and stuff they use for medicinals and fruits and this and that. It's just basically taken over. But when they're doing these radar scans now, they're seeing streets that went on for miles and miles and miles, and thousands of structures and whatnot, and they're just connecting. Like you have a pyramid or something that's covered still with earth, and all around it is just infrastructure leading to another giant pyramid or something, where that was maybe whatever town, city, like Brooklyn, maybe Queens, stuff like that. But they're all connecting now throughout the entire jungle, and it's just mind-boggling what kind of a civilization was able to do that, to where the jungle was their source, not their control. It's, man, you start and then when you see a Martian, described or an some kind of a ship on their hieroglyphs, you're like, yeah, something's not right. Something came from somewhere for this.
Well, I just don't think we're going to figure it out tonight.
Nah, hell no. But so let's get rolling. Let's get back into it. So when you were growing and whatnot, do you remember what like the first grow that hooked you emotional to, like, where whether it be some kind of roses you grew, or might have been a cannabis plant or something? What was like that first thing that you started growing where you've seen like results and you were like, yeah, this is what I want to do?
Well, whenever I was in high school, one course that I excelled in was Future Farmers of America, FFA. And you had to have a project, whether it be raising cattle, livestock, poultry, or some type of farming. So my choice, being in Florida, I had a citrus tree nursery. That was
Oh,
my
okay.
first entree into gardening, and I actually did quite well with it. We made some money. We grew some nice citrus trees for growers to come and buy, so they could take them out and replant them in their groves. So that was my first entree into the horticultural world. And from that point on, it was 100% devoted to that industry.
Nice.
After Vietnam, I, uh, I learned more in the than I ever learned in a classroom on traits such as discipline, ability to stay calm under pressure, adapt fast to changing conditions, and but one thing, I think the most important thing is to never give up, never quit your mission. And with that behind me, I joined enrolled in the University of Florida and got
Nice.
a degree, bachelor's degree in agronomy, with graduate studies in biochemistry and plant physiology.
Oh,
And
wow. Okay.
with that degree, my first job offer was with a very small company called Geigy Chemical Company. They were headquartered in Switzerland, and they were the inventors of the uh, very first herbicides that was used in corn. And
Oh,
it
okay.
was my job to introduce it to the United States. And that small company called Geigy Chemical, it went through several mergers and acquisitions, and that is today's Syngenta, the largest agricultural chemical company in the world.
Oh, wow.
And then I went to work in several other companies involved in agricultural chemicals. Scott's Fertilizer was one, and I was made the division manager of their ProGrow division, where we sold their fertilizers into the commercial nursery market. And I had the entire eastern United States. Another fellow had the western United States. That ProGrow division actually was bought by an individual that became uh, Scott's Miracle Grow. That became the Miracle Grow we know today. So
Let
I
me
was
let
a
me ask with the Miracle Grow, since we hear about Miracle Grow all the time. Safe to grow with cannabis, et cetera, et cetera. You know, you've been with the company and whatnot. Is that all myth stuff? You know, or is there stuff in there that you normally wouldn't want to put in a combustible? You know.
I do not like I don't like anything that has to do with Miracle Grow because I know their business philosophy. Um, they would come into a garden store. A garden store couldn't just pick and choose what they wanted. They had to buy the entire line. You either buy this or you don't buy anything. And
Unbelievable.
I did not agree with that.
Yeah, that's quite pricey.
And
Yeah.
then the fertilizers that they produce, they use the cheapest raw materials they can find. They use a lot of chlorides. There's a lot of salt, high salt.
Mhm.
Every fertilizer salt has a salt index. Some fertilizer salts are worse than others, and potassium chloride is probably the worst. That has the highest salt index of any of them. You can easily get burned with with those salts. They're very bad for the root system. They draw water out of the root. That's what salts do. They draw water out, and this causes all kind of stress on the plant. And when you get stress on the plant, you increase free radicals, which I will go into later. I hope you give me a chance to go into it later because one of
Yeah,
the
yeah,
medicines
definitely.
that will address free radicals. And a lot of people have never heard about free radicals. But in human health, free radicals is very important. It's the cause of over 90% of the diseases that we have today, including heart disease and cancer. But but plants have free radicals too, and they're caused by stress. So if I have a couple of minutes later on, we can go back to that.
It's kind of like pumping lactic acid into your muscles. You know what I mean? Like that's I would have to think that that's some form of the plant kicks back something like that at some point with stress. Like with a person, you start running up a flight of stairs, your legs start getting stressed and overworked, they start burning. Ain't nothing good for it ain't good in a person, it ain't good in a plant. So any of that kind of stuff. I like that kind of information. So we're definitely going to jump on that.
Well, let me give a definition. A lot of people have asked me, well, what the heck is a free radical? I've never heard of such a thing. Well, a free radical is nothing more than an atom that has lost one of its electrons. You remember from Chemistry 101 in high school, the atom has a nucleus with electrons circling around it. Well, sometimes they'll lose an electron. And when that happens, that atom is going to go out hunting for another electron to satisfy its complement. And they'll actually steal an electron from some vital component of the cell like DNA or mitochondria. And when that happens, your body or the plant takes a big hit health-wise. You're not going to have the same full genetic potential that you would have if you had the undamaged DNA or mitochondria. So I'd like to talk about that more a little bit later on in the program.
Yeah. So going along with that, with Mighty Plant, what was the first product concept? Even if it wasn't something that you have today, but what was the first thing that you started with like that? Either exists now or existed at some point.
All right. I think the first product that I made when I had a former company called Organic Laboratories. Could I talk a little bit about Organic Labs?
Yeah, of course, man. Of course.
Okay. As I said before, I was working for a lot of different corporations. They were all very good companies, great companies to work for, great salary, benefits, car, expense account. They were all very, very good companies to work for. But deep down inside, I always had this burning desire to create my own company. I wanted to have my own business, my own company. It's the entrepreneurial spirit that is in me. And I think it's the same spirit that's in a lot of your listeners out there. A lot of those guys and women have this entrepreneurial spirit. They're growing in, they're home growers, so it's in them and it's got to come out. They let it come out with a passion.
Yep.
And I was afraid to quit those companies because of the comfort zone I was in with the benefits and salary. But one time I got so-called laid off. Well, that's a polite way of saying I got fired. So I was forced then to create my own company because I didn't have any money. I was broke, no money, no job. I just got married, newly married. Couldn't even pay my rent. But instead of panicking, I went to work formulating a product. It was my first organic insecticide that I made. And that was in the utility room of an apartment where I couldn't even pay the rent. And it's product in a 5-gallon bucket with a paint drill and a painter paddle on the end of a paint drill. That was my first mixer. And so we stayed with it and we worked hard until we were able to make some headway. So we went from that 5-gallon bucket to a 6,000-gallon stainless steel tank with packaging equipment, filling equipment, 10 employees. So we had everything we needed then to really hit the ground running.
Nice.
And Home Depot kept asking us, how come some growers bring their plants in and they're cleaner and better looking than others? And the universal answer was that these nurserymen were using our products. So then Home Depot said, well, look, you guys, you need to start supplying us with your product.
Nice.
Well, I'm sorry, but we can't because we are not set up to do small package. We're only packaging it in 5-gallon pails and larger, up into 250-gallon totes. So they kept after us, but I just didn't have the ability to do that until I got word that a Quaker Oats company in Pennsylvania was going out of business, and they had everything I needed to small package products. So I bought a ticket to leave out of West Palm Beach. I had my boarding pass. I was going up to the plane to get on, and they shut the door. I'm sorry, we're grounded. We can't fly.
Oh my God.
That was September 11th. September 11th.
Oh wow.
So with that news, I quickly ran down to the car rental counter and rented a van. I didn't know if the auction would be called off or not, but I wasn't going to take the chance. So I
Yeah.
drove through the night to get into Pennsylvania, and sure enough, the auction was not called off, but I was practically the only one there.
I was just gonna say, let me guess, you had to bid against yourself.
So
Man, the stars line up sometimes, man. You know what I mean? Like as crazy as it is, and how terrible of a day that was. You know, it just had to happen. You know, so sometimes God removes obstacles. You know.
The whole good luck, bad luck thing. You think it's good luck and it's bad luck. You think it's bad luck, it's really good luck.
You must have been so happy when you didn't see anybody show up. You must have been like, yeah.
it really was. And,
got it a hell of a lot cheaper than it was going to be. I'll say that much.
That also taught me a lesson. And for all the entrepreneurs and would-be entrepreneurs out there in your audience, this is for you. You're thinking about going off on your own or doing something. Well, first of all, do it with a passion and with discipline and perseverance. But a lot of times there'll be obstacles and opportunity come up at the same time, exactly the same time.
Yep.
And it's the ones that succeed is the ones that won't let that stop them. They continue on and let the benefits of the opportunities take over, and
the obstacle's the lesson.
Winning.
The obstacle's the lesson. That's the way I look at it. The obstacle's the lesson you need to learn. And the discomfort you need to feel to get to that next plateau, in my opinion. So let's jump into soil. So do you think most growers underestimate how intelligent soil systems are?
I don't believe anyone fully understands how intelligent soil systems really are. There's more known about the bottom of our ocean and in space than we know about what goes on in our soil.
Which is a hell of not much. It's minutia. Literally, we know nothing about space or the ocean. So imagine how little we know about soil. I mean, some of the tests.
Here's
some of the
motto
stuff
that I put on every one of our bags that leaves our factory is that life on Earth cannot survive without a dynamic soil ecosystem. We have that printed on every single bag that goes out of our factory, and I firmly believe in that. But sadly, modern agriculture pays little attention to the condition of the soil they farm. It's only in recent years that I've been seeing a change for the better in their mentality. They're now trying, instead of disking and overturning the soil on a broadcast basis, they're doing now what they call split farming or split drill farming, where they don't disturb the soil, but except for in a very small slit where they plant the seed. So they're keeping intact all the soil biology. They're not disturbing it. They're not destroying anything, and they're actually succeeding in this. It's not that successful maybe the first year, but the second and third year, and from there on, they literally have cut their fertilizer applications in half, and some now are not even putting fertilizers down because they're depending on the soil food web to supply what nutrients they have that they need, and they're doing quite well with that. This is a big gamble that they need to take when they first start off doing this because they're not going to get immediate results. This is something that takes time. But the ones that stand by and do this, they are reaping the rewards. A lot of them will maybe dedicate half their farm or a quarter of their farm to the biological approach. And then as the years go by, start increasing the acreage they grow biologically. And this has worked out well for them.
Yeah. So what's actually happening underground that most growers aren't even thinking about? Like what's the aim when growers are building out their soils and stuff like that, maybe adding in some compost teas and a product like yours and whatnot. What aren't they thinking about? Like that's happening that they should.
Well, I look at it this way. There's two conditions that must first be satisfied before anything is planted, especially in containers. And they are number one is the physical condition of the soil. You got to have three conditions to meet a prime physical condition soil. Number one, you need good aeration. Number two, you need good drainage. And number three, you need water and nutrient holding capacity. If you have those three dialed in, you have a good physical condition for your soil. The next one is the biological condition. That's the soil food web that we hear so much about. And that's where it really, really gets interesting. I love going deep into the soil food web.
So let's jump right into this next question then with this one. So beneficial microbes to a brand new grower. If you had to explain that part of the soil food web and that importance, where would you go with it?
Well, I wish I had a teaspoon here for demonstration, but in this teaspoon, I'm holding up an imaginary teaspoon, there are more microbes there than there are people on this earth. And you can enlist them to help you grow a fantastic garden. Well, how do they do that, they may ask? Well, think of them like tiny factories working 24/7, producing food and medicine your plants need. Then, in turn, they will provide you with the most nutritious and best tasting veggies you have ever eaten. Now, isn't that why you want to grow a garden? For nutrition and taste? Well, if you want that, get those little guys working for you, the beneficial microbes, and they will not let you down. Never, ever let you down.
Do you think that healthy plants are built more from the root zone conditions or more from what's happening above the canopy?
Well, volumes of books have been written supporting that statement you just made. On a personal note, I've seen it with my own products, put through irrigation lines in citrus and agriculture. We see where we're putting in the microbes through the irrigation system, we see root mass increasing exponentially with a corresponding crop improvement. And I've had years of experience with ornamental nurseries when I worked with Scots. Scots didn't have any mycorrhizae, but I knew about mycorrhizae then before anyone else did. And I introduced mycorrhizae to the tropical foliage industry in Florida. And mycorrhizae inoculation in the root system gets plants ready for sale 4 to 6 weeks sooner. And that means a quicker turnover and more profit for the grower. One time to demonstrate this, the grower was growing a plant called Chef Air, which is a tropical plant. He had half of his bed in his traditional growing method. The other half I put rich soil in, which I knew had mycorrhizae in it because I got it from a host of mycorrhizae, a grass where that hosted the dense mycorrhizae populations. I put that under their liner that they put in the container. Those plants grew probably 3 times faster, and they were had larger leaves. They were just overall a more quality plant. And from that day on, this nurseryman wouldn't grow a plant without first inoculating it with mycorrhizae. So the message that I'm putting across to you is that feed the soil first, and then the top. Many times, take care of the rest. That old adage is quite true. I do believe.
Um, what's your take on how nutrients, are becoming, let's just say, additive heavy, amendment heavy, 20 bottles, boost this, miracle input that. Do you think it's just overcomplicated? I mean, you hear a lot of people say like, oh, you can get a good soil and just water it and you'll grow a good plant. You know, I think that's more true today than ever before with a lot of the stuff that's out on the market. You know what I mean? A lot of it's the same stuff, just tweaked, overdone, hyped, marketed, to no end. I think that, in my opinion, with that, with the way the industry is with that, I think it's ridiculous. It's like you can sell one product at a good price instead of 20, at an expense. It makes no sense to me how nutrients have gone. I use salts in hydroponics, but I'm a soil guy at heart. I always grow my soil plants. So seeing how so much salt and these overcomplicated stuffs are being targeted to, home growers and soil and stuff kind of annoys me, because it's like, if you're going to grow with soil, why are you even going with salts? Like, to me, it don't make sense. It's like all you're going to do is fight to build microbial, mass basically with salt, a salt heavy environment stuff. Just never made sense in my mind, So I'd like to get your take on that.
Well, the reason I think when we see these companies have what you mentioned about 20 bottles, 10 boosters, and miracle inputs, it's quite obvious the profit motive. The profit motive is there. The why so many companies have so many bottles of products is for their profit, and this is their way to create more sales, more profits. And this is kind of what pushed me into making my company Mighty Plant. I would go
Okay.
into a hydroponic store and I would see these bottles on the shelf, and I would read them. They were making outrageous claims. I couldn't believe what they were putting on their labels, and they were not that I'm have anything against psychedelic images, but to me that just
Don't make
uh,
sense.
doesn't give a professional type um, aura about the product.
Yeah.
And I thought we can do better by concentrating key ingredients into one package, especially if it's a water soluble powder. You can't package a lot of ingredients in a bottle liquid product because it'll drop out. Either that, or you have to make it so weak you have to use uh, pyrate. But in a water soluble powder, that allows us to highly concentrate the active ingredients. Therefore, you use less. And for example, uh, our powders are a lot less dense than liquid products. For example, a teaspoon of ours weighs 2.8 grams per teaspoon, whereas a liquid will weigh 5 grams or more per teaspoon. So it's not hard to over fertilize with ours, since ours are such a lightweight per teaspoon. And here's something, just a point that I want to make about some of these companies. They think we're stupid. They really do.
Oh yeah.
Uh, Read a label, especially a microbial product. They've got a long, long list of microbes. Some I've never even heard of, and they're only hurting themselves because of that list. There's only 2 or 3 of those microbes that are the key. When you add all these others, you're only diluting your key players. Why would you want to do that? You want to keep your key players strong. You want to keep them top of their game. You
Which
don't want
which ones would be the primaries that you would want listeners to look for if they're going to go out for a product and say, something that's well-rounded? What should be like the 3 target, bacterias or microbes or whatnot that they're making sure are in their product?
Good question. Microbes like Bacillus subtilis, Bacillus aminoliquefaciens, and Bacillus megaterium. Those are 3 that should be in your toolbox. Should use those 3. There's a few others that I can't remember off the top of my head, but they've you can read them on the back of your label. I think I missed one. We've got 4 in ours. And
subtilis, the licheniformis, and I can't pronounce the other one, amyloidofaciens or amyloidofaciens, something like that.
Yeah, these guys, they're very active in secreting metabolites that are beneficial to the plants. They're especially the aminoliquefaciens. It works overtime producing natural fungicides and bactericides that's harmful to the plant, and the others they got their specialties. And then when what we have found out is that you throw in certain amino acids and they will jump on those amino acids and convert them into beneficial compounds. So that's where it gets really exciting when you can have those guys working for you. Like I told the lady about having these microbes in the teaspoon. They're like the factory working 24/7, making all these beneficial compounds.
Nice. So let's get into a couple of the products. We've talked about it, just in mention a few times tonight. This is one that I use every time I'm running my soil. I've been using this for a while. I've had it. First time I bought this was probably like 3 years ago, and it's one of my first things I use whenever I start my soil. I'll get my soil ready in my pot and whatnot. I'll make one of these up. I'll pre-water it. I'll let it just rock and roll in there. Get it nice and happy, and then I'll put my plant in. A couple days later. But it's fantastic. It's super soluble. There's nothing left over at the bottom of the pail when you're done. It just literally is, a good mix, and you're ready to roll with it. What made you come up with a product that removed the brewing process and whatnot? Was there something that you were trying to solve there, or just making it quicker for guys to just get it into the soil?
Well, we didn't invent instant compost tea. We just perfected it. And we asked growers, we went around, we asked a lot of growers what they liked and disliked about the compost tea they brewed. And they had 2 common answers. And they were, number 1, sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. And number 2, they disliked the labor and time it took to brew for 24 to 48 hours. So those were the 2 negatives that we knew that we had to overcome. But then we got one of the best compost teas I've ever come across, and we discovered what key microbes in this rich compost tea is responsible for the positive results these growers have been getting. And then we paired those microbes with specific amino acids, like I mentioned before. And they converted these amino acids into additional plant growth beneficial compounds. This was the formula that gave the consistent results every single time.
Nice.
Brewing is now old school. You don't have to do that anymore. You can have a perfect compost tea in minutes. A teaspoon is all
Were you seeing a lot of growers making mistakes brewing, like or maybe overheating the how like a lot of these guys, they'll throw in these pumps and stuff like that and they get hot? Were you just seeing guys just basically ruining the teas and whatnot, more or less sometimes, or was it just the fact of it was easier to just get it in like this, you know.
Well, not only incorrect brewing that results in an anaerobic state, but a lot of the problems occur from the starting materials that go into the brew, especially organic matter such as unknown compost. Animal manures should never ever be used because you don't know what drugs the animal has had. Growth
Mm.
hormone, for example, and even hay that you that you may want to use hay as a mulch around your plants. If you don't know who produced that hay and what was used on it, that can be very dangerous. A good example is a hay is sprayed with a certain herbicide. I forgot the name of it, but it is very resistant to decomposing. And the
Mm-mm.
cow or the horse that eats this contaminated hay and passes it has that herbicide in it, and you put it
Terrible.
around your plants, you're going to kill your garden. You're going to destroy it. I've heard of
Um,
many that were destroyed just by contaminated hay used as a mulch around your plant.
yeah, I've never been a big fan of seeing people putting hay on their plants and whatnot because the last place I'm going to be grabbing that stuff from is, you know, online or from a, you know, just some a Home Depot or something, you know, and I always wonder about the source because it cringes me when I see it, you know, because I'm like, man, you know, hey, some nasty, dirty stuff, and it's been sprayed with a lot of shit normally, you know, so I'm never a fan of when I see people putting that crap all over their gardens, all over their, you know, what are those things called? The boxes outside, what earth boxes and stuff like that, you know, and they're just covered with hay. It's like you really got to know your source for this stuff, man, because you know you don't know what you're putting on top of those plants. Like I see people put like those red oak chips down, and I'm like, that shit is died. Like, why are you putting that near your plants? You know what I mean? Like, it don't make any sense to me.
That's a lot of the debate with like the neem too. Is like there's nothing wrong with neem, but like if it's grown in an area where there's herbicides used and like where it's sourced, it can like same thing. You know, can pass that crap along, and so I stay away from it because I don't
it just doesn't make sense to me. You know, it really doesn't. You know, it's like you go through all this time and effort to do things, but the last things you're doing are just make no sense. Like I seen a guy one time come on a video and he put beach sand on his plants as a you know a barrier for bugs and stuff, and I'm sitting there like, you went to the beach and got this? Yeah, it was free. And I'm like, the beach, you don't see anything wrong with that, you know? And I'm like, and he's taking a video like the next day, and a friggin' sea lice comes walking out of the fucking thing like this big nasty looking sea lice, and I'm just like, and he's like, should I throw the plants away? And I'm like, throw the room away at this point. I'm like, you brought you didn't bring, you know, Muhammad to the mountain. You brought the mountain to Muhammad. You know, like you're talking about a beach of all things, ticks and chiggers. That sand has everything in it, you know. I'm like, you just ruined your whole garden.
Yeah, not to mention all the sodium chloride you're getting from the ocean.
Yeah, I mean you know, it mind boggles me, bro. The decisions people make. I mean, you know, I hate being at the beach to begin with. Like every time you go there, a horse fly biting you. It's like there's always shit in the sand and all. I'm like, the last thing I'm thinking is being that cheap of a bastard. You just spent all that money on the grow, and now you're cheaping out on the sand. You know what I mean? Like, you know, go get, you know, a bag of. You can actually buy sterile sand. You know, like it's not a big deal. You know, even if you got that sand, you know, and sifted it and then, you know, maybe sterilized it, did something normal, the whole process. But to go to the beach, pick it up, come back and just whoop, you know, and then video it like it was the greatest invention, you know, next to sliced bread was the best part about it. I'm like, I'm sitting there just, that, you know, but the video the next day with that big ass sea lice coming out of the sand was just epic. I'm like,
fungus gnats.
That'll be in your memory for sure.
Oh man, that thing, because I've seen those things, you know, and they are nasty looking. And I'm looking at that thing and I'm just like, you know, as he's videotaping it, the thing comes creeping out, and you know, and I'm just, he's like, what is that, a beetle? I'm like, yeah, it's a beetle, all right. So, So I wanted to get into a little bit more product stuff. Bud Charge. A lot of guys in the audience they use stuff like Moab. Um, there's more organic stuff that I know use. I know C&G has one that's become popular with a lot of guys. It's an organic. It's an organic heavy PK. Blah blah blah. But Bud Charge. What is it? What's it geared towards as far as is it made to fit right into any kind of a nutrient line as far as let's just say somebody was using had some terp tea or something that they were using at one point and wanted to hit it with some Bud Charge. Where would you use it, if you could break the product down a little bit for guys?
Okay, be glad to. Bud Charge is our only product that we make that is not considered organic. Look at the analysis on it. It's a 0-50-32. And with nutrients. This is a salt-based fertilizer. And but I don't want to throw a salt-based fertilizer out there by itself. I got to do something to ameliorate the problems of salt-based fertilizers. So remember what I said about oxidative stress in your plant and free radicals. Well, salt around your root zone is responsible for a lot of the oxidative stress in your plant. And to overcome that, we put in another additive that is the world's strongest antioxidant. It's a substance called glutathione. It will neutralize the free radicals caused by the high salts around the root zone. Sure, the salts are going to cause any salt fertilizer is going to cause stress on the plant, and which in turn will make free radicals. So you've got to have something in your fertilizer to offset that damage that it will do. And I'm speaking about my own product, yes. But if we ameliorate that, it's a much softer approach by putting in this antioxidant called glutathione, which neutralizes the free radicals that's caused by high salts in the root zone. But the Bud Charge is actually one product that has really surprised us as far as sales goes, and it has taken off like a rocket. And I think one of the reasons is because of the glutathione that we have in it, and we also know that it's about $10 under the price of the product of the same analysis. And I won't mention any name, but the Foxes know it well. But anyway, that has been a big seller for us, and I want to keep our products as soft as possible. When we have accomplished that by fortifying the Bud Charge with glutathione, which is a very strong antioxidant that keeps it safe from the buildup of free radicals, which are extremely damaging to the plant.
Now, the other product that you have, as far as I guess we would call flower, the bloom stuff, is the flower initiating. Was it Prime to Bud? Am I saying it right? Is that how it's said?
Yeah.
Prime to Bud. Now that's for flower initiation and whatnot. Where would you add that? How do you add that? What is it? Can it be used as a foliar or anything along those lines? Like some stuff can be with the flower onset and whatnot. If you can go over that,
Right, it can be used as a foliar or a soil drench, and the uniqueness comes about that with our microbe package that we have in with it. And remember I said these are like tiny little factories working 24/7, producing a cascade of beneficial compounds that the plant can use. So we like to use the Prime to Bud in the early stages of flowering, the mid to late stages of veggie, and the early stages of growth. and we don't want to put heavy doses of phosphorus on at that time. I'm not a big proponent of putting massive amounts of phosphorus in the early stages of growth. Save that for the later uh, times of your stages of flowering.
Dave, let's say somebody was using like the organic grow, like let's just say somebody went with, they're using the compost tea, they're using the microbials and whatnot, and they're shifting into the flower and whatnot, and they're using the organic grow and veg and whatnot. Where would you want to back down that organic grow at all before you started with the booster and the prime to bud, or would you just kind of piggyback the two of them together?
No, I would use them together because the organic grow has a very low analysis of phosphorus. It's a 2%, and all of that comes from slow-release bone meal. So that takes microbes to break that down into available forms for the plant, whereas the prime to bud has a more active release rate of phosphorus. So I would wait until mid-veg, late veg to use the prime to bud, and carry its usage on up to about week 4, week 5 in flowering before you switch to bud charge.
And as far as if somebody was going to do like a foliar application with it, like with me, when I use a PK foliar quite often to reduce stretch and whatnot, because I run a lot of hydro lately, and I notice I kind of get a stretch in there a little harder and stuff, so I've started doing it. Now I'll usually do it like day 7, then day 17, day 27, day 37. Would you recommend a schedule like that if they were going to be using it foliar wise? Or would you want it to spread it out more? Where would you want that to fall in for, where you would be comfortable?
Okay. I tell you what, if you want to reduce stress in your plant, I prefer using either the Organogrow or the instant compost tea. And I'll tell you why.
I was wondering about the compost tea with all those labs in there. You know what I mean? I was wondering about that earlier, and I was going to try to slip it in.
You know what? We in agriculture, a lot of it's probably used more as a foliar than it is through the irrigation. And the reason for that is that the microbes on that leaf and the microbes that we have in the compost tea, they're busy converting those amino acids into plant beneficial compounds. And the leaf, of course, as you know, has stomates, and that's how it enters the plant. And I'm telling you, you can see plants that are just drooping in the afternoon or through the day, and you foliar feed them with the instant compost tea or the Organogrow. The next morning, you'll see those plants standing at attention. That's the most satisfying feeling you can have, to see your plants just, oh, they're drooping yesterday. Look at them now. Wow, what happened?
I'd have to assume there's some kind of a natural wetting agent in there or something, right? Like this, is there something added in, or is it just rolling on its own?
No, we don't have a wetting agent in those particular products, but they do form free amino acids, which means free amino acids. They're not connected together to make peptides or proteins. They're freestanding amino acids, and they're small enough to go into the stomate if you do a foliar application.
Nice.
And somebody asked me, well, how do you make this? What's the science behind this? This is very interesting. Have you been arrested? They were worn out for you. They're coming for you.
Bro, this is Brooklyn, man. It's crazy out here. They just don't stop, bro. It's with the new mayor, it's been a little worse. Let's just say that.
Okay.
I'll just leave it at that because you'll get me going with politics.
Right. The Organogrow, that's probably one of our most unappreciated products, because a lot of people say, oh, here's another organic. We'll just put it over in the basket with the other organics that are slow acting. This is the concept of organics. This is what everybody says about organics. They're slow acting. They're not high analysis. They seldom ever contain calcium, and and they're not water soluble. Well,
I
we have blown that assumption up by creating the world's first fast-acting, water-soluble organic. It checks all the boxes. It has high analysis, it's organic, it's water-soluble, and it's fast-acting. Because you can put that out and see response within a few hours, sometimes on some crops. And that's one of my favorite. If I had to pick one product that I had to grow a crop on, it would be the Organogrow.
nice.
And
Yeah,
it's
people.
one of the most. It's probably one of our most unappreciated crop products, simply because they feel like it's like all the other organics, being slow to act, or it's doesn't have high enough analysis. But here's how we make this different than other organics. We take ordinary blood meal, which is, and we enzymatically convert it into blood plasma. Yes, it's the same procedure used to make blood plasma when you receive a transfusion. The benefits are phenomenal. Blood plasma, as I said before, is 100% has 100% free organic acids, meaning there are no large blood platelets, and therefore that's why blood transfusions act so quickly. That saves your life or support or prevents you from dying. You're getting 100% free amino acids. Same thing with plants. The aminos are rapidly taken up by the plant and transported quickly to where they are needed the most. And that's why I would, if I had one product for my garden, it would be Organogrow.
Big statement. I'm digging it. You know, I listen. I like hearing when somebody stands behind their product like that, you know, and tells it like it is. Like, listen, you know, this is one of the products that's going to open your eyes. You know what I mean? I would love to do a run with just the 5 products. You know what I mean? Like, just do a full organic run with just the 5 of them: the compost tea, the Organogrow, and use, you know, the bud set, the bud charge, and see how it rips. You know what I mean? Because not for nothing, what you're getting for the price, and if it kicks, like, you know, like I know the compost tea kicks, I know the bud charge kicks, but if it all kicks together like it, I know it's going to, it can open up a whole new, you know, possibility for growers where they might not have been able to run 12 plants because they're set on, you know, this kind of a product, blah, 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 blah. But if something like this comes out where you're getting, you know, now you can run that 12 plants because you freed up that, you know, the pain in the ass of using bottle after bottle after bottle, or, you know, you got to add this one and that one because, you know, it has everything else but this. It's, to me, that's just, keep that shit. I'm at the point where I don't want any of that. And I think a lot of people are becoming that, you know, to that point too. And price matters more than any point, I think, in, you know, the industry's history. If price doesn't matter to people now, then I don't know what does. You know what I mean? Because everything has just skyrocketed. It doesn't matter what you get. You know, the costs are just
the price of flour,
astronomical.
Except for the price of flour.
Yeah, that's about it. You know, which is crazy. You know, it's like the crazy part is, back in like 2008 to 2010. The price of flour was skyrocketing. Tomatoes and flour. It was put pizzerias out of business all over New York like crazy because the prices just went through the roof, you know? So to me, you know, when you have a guy who can sit there, I've had guys that I've had, you know, when I used to do the Facebook stuff, I had guys on that couldn't even discuss their product. They literally didn't know anything about it. You'd ask them about it and they could tell you, you know, the 2 things that were on the label, but it's like, okay, well, obviously, there's more than the 2 things that are on the label. So we don't care about regulatory bullshit. We're not here for that. You know, if you can't sell it in this state, you don't want to put it on the label. That's on you. But what is in your product? And you know, crickets. It's mind-boggling. It's like you're literally selling stuff. You're advertising. You're putting it in stores, but you can't even tell me what you're selling me. You know, it's scary. You know, it's literally scary.
I know. Well, getting back to price and the cost of things, we see it every day when we go to the grocery store. Anywhere you go now, restaurants, we can't eat a meal now for less than
Oh
$75
my
a
God.
big meal. But
But
here's
let me ask you
something
a question. How much is a McDonald's, like a Big Mac meal in Florida now?
I don't even go
Like,
to McDonald's. I don't eat
oh,
fast food. I'm sorry, but I
yeah, I
don't.
I, I asked somebody down in, I think it was Georgia, and they told me it was like, like $10 or something like that. And I'm like, if you go to Manhattan and order a Big Mac meal, it's like $23, $24 for a Big Mac, fries, and a Coke.
No way.
You know,
No way.
yeah,
I did go to the
it's
grocery
insanity.
store yesterday, and I bought a pound of meatloaf and a loaf of bread. The two of them, $18.
Holy
18.
crap!
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's what
it's insane.
but
I'm
here's something that I enjoy doing is that I'll go to Lowe's, the box store Lowe's, to the garden center, and I'll go to the very back where they've got a rack that has all their plants that they can't sell. They're sick or dying, and they've got them greatly discounted. And I'll buy a bunch of those plants, take them home, and treat them with our products, and they come back to life. I have literally landscaped our home in Florida and our home in Tennessee with
Yeah,
these
there you
uh,
go.
with these plants that are essentially half dead, and
And
they've
half the time, it's just because somebody had a heavy hand with the watering. You know what I mean? They bounce right back. I used to buy it when I had my house on Long Island. I used to buy everything at the clearance thing at Home Depot. I'd see a plant looking a little bit over. Come on with me. Just get home, hit it with something real quick, and it would be right back to normal. I'm like, thank you. It's
yeah,
instead of spending $1,000, I spent 150. The
right.
the clearance rack in the garden section of Home Depot is literally the prices. And the funny thing is that every year you'd see the cactuses in that son of a bitch. They'll be like 30 brown cacti around December. It always makes me laugh. So I'd like to get to a couple of questions, about home growers, like real world cultivation kind of stuff. Let's say. So as somebody who has an organic nutrient company and has probably spoken with more growers than I have facial hair. What's some of the biggest mistake that you see like growers making at home, that if you could that just constantly
Well,
repeat it?
I think some of the biggest mistakes we all make, we try to take too good of a care with our of our plants, and by doing that, we unintentionally overwater or overfeed, and I think those are the two biggest problems that growers have. And I always advise we have a feeding chart, but I tell growers that this is just a suggestion. This is a beginning uh, start. Start with less than what's on that feeding chart, and then go up from there. Uh, no, there's no point in spending more money than you have to grow a good crop.
Yep.
And so uh, the feeding chart, like I said, is just a suggestion. It all depends on your other factors, such as your light intensity, your strain, the soil you're going in. Is it hydroponic? Is it core? Is it uh, the fiberglass? So there's a lot of factors that go into consideration, and record your parts per million also, and get a good measuring device. Like I use the blue stick. What do you call it? The what is it?
The
B Lab.
Yeah, the Blue Lab.
the blue light pens. Yeah. The pH stick.
That gives me something to go by, rather than what's on the label, what's on the feeding chart. Uh, so and don't overwater, don't overfeed. Those are the two concerns that I would have for most growers.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are heavy handed. They look at a plant that's reacting to environment as if it's selling water me, and they chase that rabbit, you know what I mean, and then they start, oh well, what happened, is it need more water? It still looks thirsty,
And
and
then
it's
they'll
like,
ask for advice from someone, and they'll give them advice. They're like, put this on, and they'll put it on with more water. Like,
yeah, yep, yeah,
You'll have a high salt concentration in your root zone that's drawing
Yeah.
water out of your plant. You see the leaves that are curling. So, it needs more water. So you dump more water on it. Well,
I think
you're going to flush out the salts, and now you got to deal with oversaturated soil media.
Yep. And then that your pH starts going kooky, and then everything just starts going out of whack. You know what I mean? Because now the plant is in a whole nother mode. I always say to people with with watering, it's less is with anything really, but watering, the only way I've ever been able to get it to somebody's head was just the old less is more. Like, you can't take away. Once you put in, you can't take away. And whether nutrients and stuff, can you take them away? There's debate and this and that. But whatever you put in there, consider it there, and it cannot be removed without a lot of interference, and that becomes an issue in and of itself, because now you're screwing with that plant's it's like no, what do you want, somebody sitting there poking you in the fucking arm all day? You know what I mean? Like, it's the same thing to me. It's like you're literally just annoying the living crap out of that plant. It's just like, so to me, it's like, whatever you're thinking of doing, if you're not sure, cut it in half and then cut it in half again if you have to, because you can always add back. You can, and it's literally the hardest thing to get through people's heads. It's for whatever reason, it's one of those things that is just, they have to learn it themselves almost. It's like, like when smell this, it smells like shit. You smell it and then you're like, oh yeah, it smells like shit. Did you really need to learn that lesson? A lot of people do, it's like, one of those things to me. But
I got an email from somebody, not an email, but a text from someone that used our instant compost tea for the first time. He was reluctant to use it, and he finally did, and he used it at 1/4 strength, 1/4 strength. And he said in his email, the rate that he used, 1/4 strength, and then he said the results. He said, "Holy smoke!"
You can't beat that review on the old website. You know what I mean? But
and back to the overwatering thing, Dave, is a lot of times too, when people overwater, is they'll be like, "Oh, I'm going to crank my lights up to try and get it to dry out." That's the opposite of what you want to do.
Yeah, or put a fan on the bag. You know what I mean? I hate that one. Putting a fan on the bag is one of my most hated things that somebody can do. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like, think of this. Again, think of this. Like, what do you think that's going to come from increasing the light? So now it's not only dealing with the bullshit that you caused down here. Now it's got to be like, like now, you know what I mean? So it's just another thing. It's like, it's you're literally just adding more, compounding the stress over and over again. Then you got a fan,
Right.
It's crazy to me, like, and the first thing that I always tell people is like, all right, when did you feed it? Like, all right, so you fed it 2 days ago. So this just started happening. All right, so let's just take the watering out of the equation, like, real quick here, and talk about, what's the environment? Has the weather changed outside? Has this happened? Has that happened? And a lot of times you just cut right through the problem. You're like, all right, should I water? No, we just went through that. You don't need the water. Like, it's been 2 days. You gave enough. Let's go over here. And a lot of the stuff is so simple to diagnose, but a lot of people either don't have the skill set, or they just have that instant panic mode. You know what I mean? Like you got to train that shit down. Like is what I always tell people. I'm like, whenever you think everything's going wrong and whatnot, I'm like, take a step back, breathe, get the hell away from the room, like clear the space, and come back to it. Don't ever just act. Take a minute, think about it, get away. I think most people just get overwhelmed almost, to a point where they just make foolish errors. New growers more than seasoned guys, but I think it still happens to people. I think a lot of stuff, that goes wrong is grower created versus the plant because, not for nothing. If you put a jug of water into it, into some soil with a seed, and just let it drip, that plant's going to find a way to survive. You know what I mean? Like it don't need you. You know what I mean? Like it does not need you at all. Just give it what it needs, and it'll take care of the rest. So to me, it's when you could get that argument into somebody's head, it's like, all right, so what part of the equation are we missing here? And they'll look at me like, and I'm like, you, get away. Get away. Let the fucking plant grow. You know what I mean? Like it's a lot of times we're just that X factor that causes chaos for whatever reason, and we don't even know it. So, and my other thing with growers too is the one thing is I think to get them into something that's like easily guided, like my philosophy with like teaching new growers is I always try to get their budget down. And I'm like, listen, if you have $40 to spend and you want to learn watering really, really simple, I always recommend that. I've talked about this quite a few times on here, is a company, Octopots. They make a basin. There's no pumps and nothing. It's a basin with a float. It's got a stick. It's got 3 lines on it. You can use soil, you can use cocoa, etc. I always try to get guys in the soil, but hydrotropism, from the bottom, blah, blah, blah. But I'm like, this is going to give you the rhythm. I'm like, at first you're going to do it. The plant's not going to drink super fast, because it's got to build its roots down. But I'm like, once you get into it, I'm like, you'll see. You're going to fill it up and it's going to drink. Every third time it does that, give it some nutrients. It's simple.
Simple as
If
that.
you want to, I'm like, if you want to see, get that rhythm down, I'm like, it's the easiest way I've been able to teach somebody. I'm like, because then I'll get into, where we'll start, we'll start on a regular pot that we're not using, something like that where there's no stick. And I'm like, all right, so from here, you're going to get that same rhythm down. You know what the plant looks like when it needs a little water, and that 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3. And just from there, graduate them off to something. But I find setting somebody up for success is probably the best thing. And a lot of people don't set themselves up for success. They set themselves up for failure because they're either prideful or they're just not knowledgeable. They've been guided wrong. They fall for hype marketing, etc. So I think that's probably one of the most important things that I've been able to get with new growers is don't feel, like you're going to go out and buy all this crap. $40 is a cheap price to pay to learn that rhythm. You know what I mean? And it's probably the best thing that I could have ever found for growers, new, even older growers. You grow some crazy plants with these things, but it's like that was, I think, has been always the hardest thing to get people to conceptualize is a rhythm of the watering. You know what I mean? And eventually you learn the plant tells you anyway. It's like you don't even need something like that. Just let the plant dictate it. Because the dryback's always cool. To a certain extent. So if you can start getting those visual cues, you're going to be fine. You know what I mean? Like, and then good products, of course, that, impact, that make an impact on, positives versus negatives, like with salts and stuff like that. It's very easy to get into that negative zone, and create more issues on top of the issues by not the diagnosis looks, like this or that. And a lot of times it's something very simple. But with like companies like yours with organics and whatnot, it's like you're setting the person up for success. Like it's if they can get the watering part down, you've got your compost tea. You've got a simple veg. You've got a simple a bud, flower program, et cetera, et cetera. So to me, a company like yours is perfect for a new grower or a seasoned grower, but especially for a newer grower because this product's organics, it's gentle, you're not going to overfeed and kill your plants. You know what I'm saying? So I love stuff like this. That compost tea is one of my favorite teas. I have another company, I like their teas too, but I won't mention them. But your stuff is right up there at the same level, as theirs, and they're very respected. So so you'll always have my my recommendation in business. I you can't go wrong with it. But
Well, thank
I
you.
wanted to.
I learned quite a bit through all the things that you just said. Going back to the salt around the root zone causing stress, but there's a lot of other things too that causes stress within that plant. And this might be a good time to talk about free radicals.
Yeah, let's roll, man. I'm down, of course.
Okay. Let me see if I got some notes on that. Okay. Well, first of all, anybody that's health conscious, they know all about free radicals. It's a very serious situation with a lot of people's health issues, and it's caused by oxidative stress. And the simplest definition of a free radical is just an atom that has lost one of its electrons. And it goes around in the cell looking to see where they can steal an electron. And a lot of times it's from a vital component of that cell, such as DNA or mitochondria. And when that happens, your genetic potential of your plant has been compromised. You're not going to get the same results from your plant that the genetics dictate that it should have. And it's all caused by weakening the contents of that cell. It doesn't have a full complement of mitochondria. The DNA's been damaged. So obviously, it's not going to produce like it should. So how do we solve the problem? Well, we're not going to solve the problem by taking away the things that we do to that's are commonly used in growing, such as your lighting. You got to have good lighting at the right level, the right strength, the right light rays, the spectra. You're not going to get away. A lot of people are not going to eliminate their salt fertilizers. They're still going to use salt fertilizers, which will concentrate around the roots, draw water out of the roots. That causes oxidative stress, to where you have, which just increases your free radical content in the cell. And you have to minimize your free radical within the cell as much as possible. So here's how we can help the grower. We have developed a product we call Quell, Quell. And we chose that name because it's similar to quenching. It quells or diminishes the free radical content. And it does it in a very unique way. It sacrifices one of their own electrons and gives it to that free radical. So then it's no longer a free radical. But what happens to the electron donor, which is called glutathione, which is an antioxidant? Doesn't it now become a free radical? No, it doesn't, because it changes into another molecule that has a full set of electrons. This is an amazing thing about nature, how nature has provided this.
Yeah.
And that to me is a miracle. But we have located a source of pure glutathione that we are now putting into a new product called Quell, which should be ready for market soon. And I think this is going to be a new category that's going to skyrocket in popularity because of the immense favor it does for the plant and for the grower.
It would be fantastic to have something like that. You know what I mean? Like, I said it would be fantastic to have something like that. You know?
Well, it's going to be ready. I can't tell you the exact date. As anything, there's always bumps in the road that causes production to slow down. But we're actively sourcing the components that we need to make this product, and we have already put it together in small quantity, and it works just like I described. And plants respond to it. You take a plant that is suffering from oxidative stress, and it seems to recover very quickly. It's a very, well, I won't say quickly, it's a very subtle change. It doesn't happen overnight, but it is a very subtle change. Once you have, and we are so interested in what happens in that cell. We're a company that's not looking at just the surface of plants. We want to dive deep. We go down to the cellular level. We want to know what goes on in that cell. What's the physiology of it? What is happening? How can we support the contents of that cell? And how can we support that physiology? How can we optimize it? And we can optimize it by providing the glutathione in this product called Quell to neutralize those free radicals. The free radical is the enemy of the cell, because it will do nothing but, it's like a thief. It robs, steals, and destroys. And we don't want that to happen in that cell. And that's what causes cancer and heart disease in humans and mammals. It's this oxidative stress that causes the free radicals, that robs. It does the same thing in your cell. It robs electrons from the mitochondria, from DNA, and from other vital components of that cell. So
just hijacks the whole system.
I believe I have not read anywhere where this problem has been addressed in the plant world, in the horticultural world, but we're probably the first ones to bring this to the attention of growers like yourself and to the industry.
Now, how would you go about that? Would that be something that you would be using as part of your normal protocol, or would that be something that if you would want to add in, if the plant starts going through these issues, is it something that where would it fit in? I would just think to put it in as part of my feeding thing, but is it something that could be how would you put it, like an intervention kind of thing?
It could be an intervention, but the best way to apply it is by foliar.
Okay.
And I say here because when it goes into the soil, it's subject to degradation. And on the leaf, it's not subject to the same degree of degradation. And it can go into the stomate, and it'll circulate into the plant phloem in the xylem and be absorbed to the cell wall, and it'll find its way inside the cell to do its job.
Nice. The mesophyll magic, as we like to call it, So I'm going to shoot some rapid fire questions at you, just some random things. I know we're getting off in time here. We're about an hour and a half in, so I'd like to throw a couple.
Great.
I'm happy, man. For listen, that's what I like to hear. So I'm going to throw some rapid fire stuff out there, just some stuff, a little, some light questions and whatnot. So, what is your favorite plant of all time? Whether it be a cannabis strain or it's a rhododendron. What is the one thing that you could say it's just has to be in my garden?
Well, my favorite plant is citrus, and because I've been involved in citrus production, and I've saved a lot of citrus from dying, and that's the situation in Florida. A lot of citrus is dying in Florida because of this devastating disease, and I think we're on the road to finding solutions for it. So I have to say my favorite plant of all time is citrus.
All right. What's your favorite gardening tool?
The hoe, not the two-legged hoe, but the
um,
We're fans of both around here.
yeah. I don't think I'd throw either out of the garden. What's your favorite smell in the garden?
Oh, I would think that would have to be jasmine. I love jasmine.
Interesting. Okay. Um, weirdest weirdest thing you ever had somebody tell you about their growing? You know, like just the most oddball thing, like where they used peppermint as a whatever. I don't know.
Me myself, I've grown something that people can't believe that it's in my backyard. I grew a ponytail palm. Are you familiar with that plant?
No, I'm not. What is it
Oh,
like?
you can plant
It's got to
Home
look
Depot.
crazy.
It'll probably be maybe a foot high, and big around is maybe an apple at the at
Just
the
this little
base.
tiny thing.
But in my backyard, I have a ponytail palm that's exceeding 20 feet high,
Holy
and
shit!
it's probably 10 feet in circumference at the base.
Get
And I
out of
started
here!
planting when it was just a little tiny thing from a
How
seed
long's that been going?
about 45 years.
Damn, that's a big trunk though, man. 10 foot
It is.
around at the base. That's a big
It's
boy.
a very, very exotic looking plant. You'll never forget it if you see it. It's very
Yeah,
exotic.
that's insanity. I like stuff like that where it's just I can't 10 feet at the base is just friggin' crazy to me. That's not a small plant, bro. Or a tree. So what's the hardest plant you've ever had tried growing, or it just was a fight the entire time?
Well, quite frankly, I haven't made a plant yet that was hard to grow. I'm pretty much growing about everything I touch.
Okay.
So I haven't met that one yet.
I'm sure we know the answer to this one, but let's go with it. Compost pile or worm bin?
Oh, worm bin.
All right.
Even though I
Um,
make compost products, but the like instant compost tea, the worm bin, because they are planetary creatures and they make a lot of beneficial compounds.
oh
So
yeah,
I do
yeah.
like worm bin.
Worms is something else, man. I'll never forget the first time I ever had them. I had a 100-gallon uh, fabric in my room, and I just grew one giant, basically like an outdoor plant indoors. The thing was massive, and I had put, I don't know, I probably 6 or 7 orders of worms in there, and just let them go. And I remember after the plant was done, I kept, like feeding into the dirt and stuff because I was going to use it, but I wasn't sure when. I had some smaller stuff. So I just kept feeding shit into it, to keep the biodiversity going, whatever you would want to say. And I went and dug into that fucking thing one day. And there was more worms in that son of a bitch at one part of it than any. I was like, where I probably put about, maybe 1,500 worms in there. The entire thing was just worms. I mean, there was plenty of other shit in there, but the amount of worms, those things are breeders. When the environment's right, man, can those things throw down on some generations. It's insane how productive worms can be. And I've always wanted to breed them, to see how and get a count on them, but I know I don't have the patience for it these days, but I'd be curious to see, like how many worms were actually generated from that original, dumping, because it was crazy. There was, I know I couldn't imagine getting that many worms back. I was just like, man, these things must just lay eggs all day long.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah, worms are they're unbelievable when it comes to breeding. Like if everything's correct, the environment, everything has to be right and stuff. But I must have just accidentally had it. It was just keeping the room right. And man, they were humpers. I'll tell you that much. But so let's see here. If you can grow anywhere in the world, where would you want it to be?
If I could grow anywhere in the world, that would be Costa Rica. I love
Costa
Costa
Rica.
Rica. I love the growing climate. I love everything about Costa Rica. The people.
Cheap too, man. it's cheap too compared to here. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah.
I remember when I was down there in the '90s, bro. It was like 14 cents a gallon of diesel fuel or something like that. It was just absurd. I was like, huh. I'm paying like $4.50 a gallon right now. The guy was looking at me laughing. He's like, yeah. I was like, it's cheap down there. Well, it was back in the day. So let's see. So what's your favorite terpene profile?
Well, that's hard to say because there's over 200 terpene profiles, and I've never met one I did not like. So
there's nothing wrong with that, man. I think that's most of us. Yeah.
And thank God for those 200.
Yeah, pretty much, right? All right. So let's see here. So has building Mighty Plant and getting more involved with with organics and stuff like that changed your look as far as like nature in general? Have you had a different understanding of environment and everything like that since you've been growing and everything?
I'm sorry, what's the question?
Has building Mighty Plant and getting more into the organic, getting just an organic company, has it changed like your personal look at like nature and stuff like that?
Yeah. I've always loved nature, and just building the Mighty Plant company, it puts me closer to the ground. It puts me closer to the soil and what's happening underneath. And we have a horse farm in Tennessee, and we grow our own hay. And
all right. Wow.
all our products are used on our hay, and we had a lot of compliments. So the cows are our best, give us the best reviews because all these farmers they sell their hay to the cattle growers, but the ranchers, they like our hay the best because the cows prefer our hay the best because it's in higher protein because of how we cultivate it. And so to me, this tells me nature has a plan. And if you follow the plan right, you're doing everything right. And the cow is your judge of how well you're doing because it'll go to your hay before it will someone else's hay. So
that's funny, because everybody just thinks that they'll just eat whatever, but when they choose one over the other, that's always a good sign, So, so a couple of more questions. I'm just gonna roll with here, and then we'll close it up because we're running a little long. So, I always ask this to guys that have their own companies and whatnot. What kind of legacy do you want Mighty Plant to leave behind in horticultural or the grow communities and whatnot?
It'd be a great legacy to improve everyone's living nature and honor those that preserve it for future generations. I know we've got to have real estate developments. I know that it's just a fact of life, but it's essential, and it's essential for a growing population. But nature preservation and optimization to the max should be in every comprehensive plan for real estate development. So if my little part that I do can leave a legacy to instill the love of nature in everyone, even the real estate developers that are paving over with asphalt and concrete, if we can get them or the cities to make their comprehensive plan to favor nature, then that would be a legacy I'd be proud of.
Hell yeah, I'm all for that one. So I'm going to close it out with one last question. And if somebody listening remembers one thing from this entire conversation, what do you hope it is?
I would like for everyone to, everyone's got a passion, no matter how small. They like to do certain things. And but I would like for everyone that's listening to feed that passion and nurture it for creating something that gives joy and comfort to others. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, hell yeah. So, brother Dave, man, this was awesome. I appreciate you coming on and deep diving into your philosophy on growing, your philosophy on your products. Just your whole demeanor in general, man. You're just such a laid back dude. A wealth of information. Really hope that that people start to push more towards organics. The industry is definitely going that way. Whether it be cannabis, whether it be people growing veggies and whatnot that used to use hot products on their stuff. And I hope that companies like yours make it easier for people to get into those into it with the price points being way better than most. The fact that everything is soluble, instantly, it's just such a solid company, solid products, and anytime you would want to come back, when that new product comes out, if you want to jump on for an hour or something just to talk about it, and get it into growers' heads, you're always welcome to come back, man. You have my info. It just I can't say anything but more than just, thank you so much for hanging out, man. It's guys like you that helped push the industry to where it is, as far as the organics and whatnot. Because not for nothing, salt's been winning for a long time, bro. It took me it was like taking teeth out, trying to convince people to use like living soils and stuff. When I first started the social media stuff, like about 7 years ago, I would argue with people, and I'm like, listen, just try the soil, man. I'm like, just stop the salts for a little while, try this, like, relax, like, we got you, like, well, you're like a little baby, we'll coddle you. But the people who did, and you saw the turn, people were like, wow, and I'm like, hey, that's all you need, you know what I mean? Like, you see it, you got it, and to me, the everything about it is just better, I've never been a salt fan. Like I said, I use it, for the hydro because I don't like. I'm not a fan of, of non-sterile. I think it just comes with more hassles than it's worth. And but the stuff that I smoke, it's always grown organic. So, we appreciate you being here, Ryan. Man, thank you for chilling, dude. I know you weren't feeling so great, so I appreciate you chilling. And guys, we're going to be back, I think, not this week, the week after we're back. I forgot who was on the schedule again. I'll post it. But anybody who hung out tonight, thank you for hanging out. Guys, you can check out Dave's entire line at themightyplant.com. All products are on there. There's an email and a message center that you can get in touch with them if you have any questions about the products. I'm sure, Dave, you have no problem ever answering anybody, whether it be on a DM or anything like that. So anything you want to close out with, Dave?
Well, I just want to close out thanking you and your organization for having this podcast. I think you've really performed a great service.
I appreciate it, man.
Bringing all these people in that are experts in their field, and I really appreciate that. And you had some really awesome questions. I was a little bit nervous.
I'll tell you, man. I'll tell you. I am not a fan of. I'm not a fan of questions normally, but I've come to learn that it's the easiest way to steer a good conversation through properly, because if it's just all willy-nilly and there's no real question to it, where it's just more of a conversation, I've noticed, at least for me, that information doesn't get passed along as easily than when it's directed and whatnot. So unfortunately, I've had to go the question route. It's not my favorite thing, because the other thing too is I don't like to do it, because I don't know if a specific question will ever come off to like where the person doesn't want to discuss the topic or something. So I'm getting used to it more, but it's not my favorite thing. I'm going to tell you, bro, it really isn't. I'm not a fan of the questions and stuff because of that, because I don't ever want to say something in a question that somebody be like, thinking that I'm, it's misleading, or or how would you put it, like what's that term where where you're feeding them for for something that you want, like I can't remember. Yeah, leading them. You know what I mean? Like I don't ever want to come off like that, because I do think there's a lot of podcasts that I've seen, and I don't even call this podcast. I call this just like just a hangout more versus a podcast. But a lot of the podcast people I've noticed, they just, I don't know, man. The mark's not
Even the softballs, yeah.
Yeah, it's just, yeah, exactly, softballs versus versus like real questions about stuff, like and I don't know. I'm not a question guy, but I'm glad you enjoyed it. I really am, because it's one of my, bro, you have no idea. When I do these questions, I sit here for hours and I'm just like, man, are these good? Are these going to be all right? So I'm glad that you gave me some good feedback. My Uber rating stays at a 5.
Well, you're the John Rogan. Is that his name? Rogan or Reagan?
Rogan. Yeah, I like this kind of
culture world.
Yeah, I wish, Christ, if that was the case, I'd be in Costa Rica fishing next to you.
I'm all for that too.
But all right, guys. Again, Dave, thank you, man, and I will definitely be in touch. Because I want to get some of the product over, so I can bang out a run with it. The organic grow and stuff. So I'll be in touch this week to try to get that set up, and we'll go from there, brother. All right, man. So, all right, guys. Everybody who hung out, thank you, and we'll see you in a couple weeks. All right, Dave. Have a great night. Ryan as well.
Good night, fellas.
All right. Bye.